This is the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast presented by Medi-Share. Together, we'll unpack fantasy, faith, and life. I'm Bryce Johnson with Harrison Zuckerberg, and we are your fantasy coaches here to encourage you and help you win while also finding meaning and purpose throughout fantasy season. We won't always be right, but we hope we'll be convincing. We're a part of the Unpacking It Podcast Network. I'm coming to you from the Unpacking It Ministry Studio in Charlotte, North Carolina, and fired up to be with you today. Not every Monday does it come down to the wire for all my fantasy leagues, but last night, wow, I hung on for a win. I'll tell you all about that today. Also, a lot of injury concerns across the NFL. Some key players, Cooper Kupp leads the way. One of the most reliable, trustworthy fantasy players over the last few seasons. And now there's some question marks in LA. And then what about the Indianapolis Colts? Are they back? Can we trust Jonathan Taylor again? Has Jeff Saturday unleashed that offense? Or is it just because of the Raiders? And the Raiders stink. And what do we make of the Raiders moving forward from a fantasy perspective? Can we trust any of their players moving forward as well? Or is that a dumpster fire? And then what about in Denver? We've been talking about them all season long. Things seem to just get worse and worse there as well. So a lot to get to. We'll do a little peace or panic this week. We'll do accountability as always. And then also today's breakout topic, where we take a fantasy concept related to the Bible, related to our own lives. We're talking never giving up. And that's a situation that takes place this time of year when fantasy managers start giving up. They check out. They no longer do their lineups. We are against that. You can't do that. Come on, be better than that. It's for the integrity of the league. And then also we'll talk about it from a faith perspective and a life perspective about never giving up in life as well. And really, the character, it's revealed in fantasy. So if you're the kind of guy that gives up in fantasy, you're probably not listening to the show, first off. You don't listen to fantasy shows. You've checked out. But for the person in your league, it's revealing some character about them. You got to finish strong. Come on. So we'll get into that a little bit more in just a little bit as well. I do want to thank our sponsors today. We're so excited to welcome Sugar Creek Coffee, a part of our show now. And you can check out sugarcreekcoffee.com. Use the promo code UNPACK. You'll save some money. And also you'll support Unpacking It. Their passion, Sugar Creek Coffee, is for coffee. They love for people. It's handcrafted, small batch, artisan roasted. So get some coffee here from Charlotte. So if you listen outside of Charlotte, check out some of the flavors from Charlotte. sugarcreekcoffee.com. And we're also brought to you by Medi-Share. Medi-Share has options for you today if you're looking for a reliable healthcare option. And so check out medishare.com/unpacking it. All right, let's begin with fantasy shenanigans. And last night, Monday Night Football, Eagles, Washington, a lot of players involved on fantasy starting lineups, especially Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Miles Sanders. And I'm not sure people are playing Taylor Heineke, but maybe Terry McLaurin. But for me, I didn't have anybody playing. But I was up by 7, and my opponent, one of my good buddies, had A.J. Brown starting. And all he needed was 7-8 points to win. And what happens? A.J. Brown gets 1.7. Unbelievable. I hung on for the win. I looked at, okay, has A.J. Brown had any bad games this year? He had one other 6-point game earlier this season. But for the most part, he has been dominant in fantasy, multiple touchdown games. And so going in last night, it's like, yeah, maybe a long shot to win. But man, I needed the win. I got the win. And A.J. Brown, who I love, I didn't have him in any fantasy. I was so bummed. I was like, man, I didn't get him in any of my leagues this year. But he helped me out. He got me the win. So I'm celebrating that today. And we'll say hello to Harrison in just a second. The one other big kind of situation for me, I went head-to-head with Justin Fields in 2 different leagues. and I still won. I still pulled it out despite the unbelievable performance. So Fields has been lighting it up. I know you are fired up about that, Harrison. How you doing? And how was the fantasy weekend for you?
I'm super fired up. I went 3-0 this week thanks to Justin Fields having another incredible game. He is really unbelievable. Another 100-yard, 4-touchdown game back-to-back
Oof.
weeks now. That is unheard of. That's something Lamar Jackson's never done, Kyler Murray's never done. All these great quarterbacks. He really could be an absolute fantasy superstar going forward if they keep putting him in the right situations like he has been for these last few weeks. And then finally, like you mentioned before, we see vintage Jonathan Taylor. I have Jonathan Taylor in a league. He has been so disappointing the whole year. He's what's kept my team from greatness. And now the 1 week he comes back and he actually performs like he's supposed to, I get a 30-point win. Wow, what do you know? Maybe if he'd done that for the whole season, I'd be undefeated at this point. But
Absolutely.
last night my Commanders get the win, and you were talking about crazy finishes from last night. One of my friends was in a league where he won by 0.08 points. Now, that's a crazy win by itself to win by 0.08. But what was even more wild is he was playing against Devontae Smith and was losing by 2 points with 3 seconds left in the game. Devontae Smith gets charged for the fumble on the lateral play on the last second of the game. His opponent loses 2 points, -2. He ends up winning by 0.08 because of that last play fumble.
Oh,
So some
oh my
unbelievable
goodness.
wins that I heard of coming out of that Monday Night Football game, in addition to yours with A.J. Brown.
Absolutely, because that was a surprise game last night for a lot of different reasons, and so that affects the fantasy world as well. So, man, excited to get the wins for me and for you, and so that's good news. So I hope that our listeners, your teams are doing well too. And we talked weeks ago. Sometimes you get off to a slow start. This is the time of season where you want to hit your stride. We're gearing up for the playoffs. The playoffs are right around the corner. We're working through the bye weeks. These are the weeks where your depth is being revealed as well. And also, the biggest thing too, we can't panic. Guys, even Jonathan Taylor, it was a bummer there for a while, but we know how good Jonathan Taylor is. And now he's back out there. It looks like he's healthy. And they don't get to play the Raiders every week, but to at least get some momentum and some life out of Jonathan Taylor, very encouraging. So if you've been able to at least stay alive to this point, you might be able to go on a run now. So I'm with you. I got Taylor in one league, and so feeling encouraged by that. So let's jump into a little bit of accountability, because it's fun to celebrate some of the wins, but we also miss out on players. And with the emergence of a number of these players, I've been kicking myself for guys that I just passed on in the waiver wire, or a couple guys that I gave up on. And that, of course, one is Cole Kmet. I gave up on him weeks ago, and now I'm watching him light it up with Justin Fields, and that's a bummer. The other player that I did not even consider picking up, Deonta Foreman. I just thought, fire sale, dumpster fire in Carolina, forget about it. I don't want any of those guys. Deonta Foreman is the real deal. He is a great running back, and fantasy-wise, he's getting the carries, he's getting the production, and the Panthers are going to continue to feed him. So I'm bummed that I missed out on him, but very impressive with what he's been able to do. Harrison, what about for you? How do you need to be held accountable today?
So for me, a few weeks ago, I said that Kyren Williams was someone you wanted to stash in your IR spot because he was going to come in and take over the starting role for the Los Angeles Rams. Last week was his first game healthy off IR, and unfortunately, he did not do that. He really was not involved in the game plan at all until the last drive of the game, which he did score, I think around 3 or 6 points in fantasy, depending on what your league you're in, because he had 3 receptions for 30 yards on that final drive. So maybe they see something they like with him because of that, and he gets a little bit more of a role moving forward. But it really looks like he is still the third back there, behind Cam Akers coming back and behind Henderson. So unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be the breakout, performance for the rookie running back that I was hoping for.
So that leads me to one of the big points today. And my guess is most people agree with this. The Rams are in big trouble. This is bleak. This is not good. I have Cup in one league. and actually the Unpacking It League. So maybe we have some listeners today. I'm going to try to trade Cooper Kupp. I'm going to try as hard as I can to at least get something, because I just don't see this season turning around for the Rams. And I'm afraid they start to unravel. And that seems to be the direction the Rams are heading. And maybe Van Jefferson, he's kind of a cute name out there that, maybe we'll go get Van. I don't want Rams guys on my roster at this point. Heading into the playoffs, the fantasy playoffs, Matthew Stafford banged up. Their backup quarterback, not great. Just lost to Colt McCoy and the Cardinals, who are also sort of a mess. So if two situations happened on Sunday, the Colts versus the Raiders, that's a battle of the messes. The Colts survived. So that means the Raiders are in a worse mess. Cardinals, Rams, the Rams ended up in a worse spot. So very concerning from a fantasy perspective. How do you feel about that? Would you agree with that with the Rams?
Yeah. So what's really tough about the Cooper Kupp situation is it looks like he's going to probably be out 3 to 4 weeks. And by the time he comes back, you're already in the fantasy playoffs. So unless you're locked in right now, which you might be because he's been great so far this season. So if you have him, your team's probably doing well. It's really going to be tough to go without that star player for those next 3 weeks when you're making your final push. And when you talk at the Rams as a whole, this team is so built around Cooper Kupp on the offense. He really is like the most irreplaceable wide receiver for an NFL team. You look at Tyreek Hill, they have other great weapons in that offense if he were to go down, like Jalen Waddle, like Mike Gesicki. You look at Jamar Chase has been out for the few weeks. The Bengals, they still have T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. There is really no one else there for the Rams to replace Cooper Kupp, on the NFL level or from a fantasy level. So he's probably the most devastating injury that you could have for a team, both in the NFL and in fantasy. Their run game's been really struggling. Offensive line's been struggling. Matt Stafford's been struggling. It is not looking good for them for the rest of the season. And let's say he does come back in time for the fantasy playoffs, I could see them just shutting it down with him. If we're not competing for a playoff spot, unless they somehow find a way to win 2 games over these next, 3-4 game stretch, if they're sitting at like 4-8 when he comes back, just shut him down for the season. There's no use to have him play those last 2 games and have something happen to him. So, he may be done for the whole year, even if that's not what the injury is. It's that severe. They could just shut him down, not have him play again. And that would really be terrible for fantasy managers.
Yes, it's my concern. And I hate to say I'm like not surprised, but I'm not surprised, because things were so great for him for so long. And eventually we've just seen it in fantasy and in the NFL. Eventually you get that injury or things aren't clicking the same way. It happens to the best of them. And so Kupp has been the best of them. And now, unfortunately, it's costing us as fantasy managers. So he would have been great to trade away a couple weeks ago, which I'm kicking myself for. But I'm going to try to almost give him away just to get a healthy body, because I want at least maybe someone else is willing to take that risk, or they have an extra wide receiver they're willing to take that risk, to stash Kupp on the bench. But I'm not sure I'm willing to do that. I'm really not, which is crazy to think. But that's a top pick, first round pick. All right, let's go to a positive side. Some other things that we're excited about following the weekend. And, I got to look to Kansas City, and I think you wanted to mention a player. I'll mention one as well. But Isaiah Pacheco, man, what a great day for him and continuing to be the starter. So only 82 yards, but we're seeing him build. Like each week, he's getting more involved. He's playing better. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 0. Big 0. Actually benefited me because I played against him. But Pacheco's a part of this, and so that's going to be huge down the stretch as he gets more and more comfortable in one of the best offenses in the league. And so if he's on the field, that's great news. Also, if you listen to the show over the years, I love Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard, they're feeding the man. He's getting the opportunity. Zeke has been out. Hopefully they're not dumb enough to, de-emphasize Pollard too much whenever Zeke comes back. Pollard needs to be a key element to this run game, to the offense, coming out of the backfield as well. He's a star. He's awesome. So finally the Cowboys are seeing that, and they lost the game, but they're embracing it for sure. And then lastly, the consistency of Brandon Ayuk. I've been thrilled with this. He didn't have a monster game, but he's been the reliable wide receiver. Kittle hasn't been. Even Debo, we've kind of seen some up and down with him this year. Brandon Ayuk, very solid. So I've been thrilled with that. What about for you, Harrison? Who are some guys that have really been clicking for you?
So for me, it's Kadarius Toney. He's someone I was big on in the offseason. I've held on to and advocated for this whole year. Second week in Kansas City, they finally get him fully immersed into the playbook, draw up all these gadget plays for him. He has a fantastic game, scores his first career touchdown ever. And now with Juju Smith-Schuster out with a concussion, he could become even better in this Kansas City offense as the go-to guy there in the receiver room. So I think his stock is only trending up from here. Then obviously we already talked about the Bears, Justin Fields, Cole Kmet, awesome weeks. And then another guy who I was a really big fan of at the beginning of the season, but just because of injuries to himself and to the quarterback, really hasn't had great games until recently. And that's Dalton Schultz. He was someone who I thought could be a top tier tight end this year. With both him and Dak healthy, he's put up double-digit fantasy points every week, had a great game last week, and is really showing that he's the legit number two number two target in this Cowboys offense. So I think he's someone where if maybe he was dropped or is on someone's bench, you should go out and get him because he's probably a locked in top 5 tight end moving forward, especially for the fantasy playoffs.
And also with Zach Ertz, who's been a top 5 tight end this year, being injured. And so, yeah, we're scrambling around looking to find some consistency at tight end and somebody we can rely on. There aren't many because even Mark Andrews has been, let down with injury wise. So it's hard to find. I've been playing Freiermuth and he's been fine, but it's like 7 points. I'm like, all right, still a top 10 tight end. I'll take it. It's hard to get points at that position. It really is. So, all right, there's some good players. We'll talk peace or panic in a little bit as well. Some of the guys that have been struggling and how concerned we are about those players. We'll also talk about the waiver wire with Harrison as well. But I'm going to jump right into this week's breakout right now, where we take a fantasy concept related to the Bible, related to our own lives, and be sure to check out fantasyfootballfellowship.com for all of our content. You can become a member, get access to all of our faith and football and fantasy content. But this week, I want to talk about never giving up. And this kind of season, we know what team toward the fantasy playoffs shape. There's always that middle tier that it could go either way. And then there are a couple teams down at the bottom of the standings. They're fighting to not finish last, right? Especially in leagues where there's a punishment for last place. Their focus has shifted from, all right, I'm not going to make the playoffs. I just don't want to finish last. But it's inevitable that every league, there's that manager and depends on how serious your league is, especially if it's like a work league or kind of a random league that you joined. I'm in a neighborhood league. And you get those managers that start giving up, right? They're like, they check out. They no longer do their lineup. You'll go to your matchups and you go, this player's on IR. What's he doing in your starting lineup? Or they're still playing some player that we knew hasn't produced in weeks, and so they haven't been keeping up with their lineup. And it's really frustrating because you want that integrity of the league to be strong. And here's what I love in fantasy leagues when this happens. When I see somebody in the league that has tough breaks, maybe a bunch of injuries, their team's just not very good, yet they keep fighting. They keep working the waiver wire. They try to make trades. They continue to try to get some wins, even though they may not be fighting for the playoffs. They're trying to pull an upset. And so I enjoy the competitiveness of fantasy football, and I want that to continue all the way to the end. I don't even like getting a win. Like, it's nice. I got one win this week. I was up against a guy that wasn't keeping up with his lineup to the level that he needed to. And it's good to get the win, but it's also, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth too. So I'm all for finishing strong all the way until the end, the final week, even if the playoffs aren't on the line. Put your best lineup out there. Go try to get the win. And I would argue too that it reveals a lot about your character. Because if you're the kind of guy that isn't committed and you just kind of give up and who cares? I lost. It's just weak. It just sort of says, come on, man. You're better than that. You can be better than that. And so when we think about this from a life standpoint, we all face adversity. Losses and disappointments are going to come. Injuries are going to come in life as well, and failed expectations and all of that. And so we're all up against it from time to time. Everything goes wrong, and you feel like you have no chance in life, and everything's just piling up, and it's one thing after another. And I've felt that this year in fantasy. It's like, wait, Jonathan Taylor and DJ Moore and Darren Waller and Russell Wilson, this is just a nightmare. But I've wanted to continue to persevere and not give up. And so I've made some tweaks. And now I've got Jimmy G and Trevor Lawrence as my quarterbacks. And so we're moving in the right direction. Now Jonathan Taylor's back out there. And so in life, when we feel, though, unfortunate circumstances, I've got no chance, we're tempted to believe that our best option is to give up. In one way or another, it's just you check out, you give up, you stop working hard at work, or you stop working hard in your marriage. You kind of give up on your marriage, you even give up on your kids sometimes. And it's like, they don't listen to me anymore. And you give up, or you give up on friendships, or, there's all these different opportunities that we have, and we're tempted to just throw in the towel. And that's not a great way to live. And especially for us as followers of Jesus and believers in God, who we want to live our lives for him. We want to be the type of people that continue to do the right thing in life, setting our lineup correctly to the best of our ability until the end. And so even when we face injuries left and right, and it's especially during these times that we want to keep going. And as Galatians 6:9 says, do not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. And so there is fruit, there is joy when we continue to persevere and we don't give up, and we continue to trust God. We continue to rely on him through whatever season we're facing. And we continue to do the right thing. And so, even if we lose or fail temporarily, and our circumstances are bleak, God is still working in us and through us, and he uses all those circumstances for our good and his purposes. And so it's up to us to continue to look to him, continue to keep going. And as Romans 12:11-12 says, never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. And so we keep on going. We keep on praying. We don't let the difficulties of life cause us to curl up in a ball and give up. And so we keep going. And so kind of lastly, when you think about fantasy, you respect the managers that do keep playing, that keep putting their lineup in, and you lose respect for the other guys. And so the same kind of thing. People are watching us when they see, all right, let's see how Bryce handles this situation. Is he going to keep going, or is he going to give up? And that reveals our own character, but more importantly, it points to our reliance, our faith, our hope in Jesus. And yeah, I'm going to keep going because I trust God. If things don't look good, I don't know how things are going to work out, but I'm going to keep going because I trust God. And it's hard. Trust me, those days are hard where it's just it feels easier to give up. And for me personally, I've been unpacking it for 9 or 10 years now. And there have been multiple times where I was ready to give up. It's too hard. I can't keep going. I don't want to keep raising money. It's too hard to try to build a ministry. It's too hard to try to get listeners. It's too hard to try to get subscribers to the devotional. And I don't want to do it anymore. Yet God continued to give me the strength, the vision, the clarity, the perseverance to keep going. I couldn't have done it without him. But he gave me the encouragement that I needed. Somebody would text me, somebody would call me, somebody would show up, somebody would provide a need in one way or another, and I just kept going. And now I'm enjoying where we're at as a ministry, and the fruit and the blessings and the joy, all that comes from not giving up. If I would have given up a few years ago, I never would have met Harrison, right? So I kept going, and now we're doing the show, and things are heading in the right direction in a lot of ways with unpacking it. And so that's my encouragement today, to keep going, and most importantly, to keep the faith, to keep our faith in God, to not give up. And man, he's been silent, or he didn't answer my prayer exactly the way that I wanted. No, we continue to trust him. He's good and faithful and all knowing, and He's got the best plan for us. So let's keep trusting and looking to him. And so in 1 Corinthians, it says, therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. So the work that we do, the effort that we put into, especially for the Lord, and the efforts to live for Him and point other people to Him, and to do His ministry in whatever sphere of influence that we have, and whether at church and opportunities outside of it, we keep going. Our labor's not in vain. And so, lastly, at the end of our lives, we'll get to the end, and we'll want to be able to say what's written in 2 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. That's what we want to be able to do. Be able to say at the end, as we finish strong and persevere all the way to the end of this journey in life, and then we get to join Jesus for eternity, and we'll reap the benefits there, and of course for all eternity. And so we get to know Him and follow Him, and have that peace and joy and hope in Him. So let's never give up. Let's keep going. Let's never give up, and keep fighting the good fight of faith each day. In fantasy and life, let's keep it rolling. Let's keep it going. And so in order to help us keep going, we got to go to the waiver wire a little bit. And so let's bring Harrison back in here to look at some of the players that we can target this week. And one thing off the bat, it's always important to go take a look at who was on a bye last week that's coming back fresh from a bye. Don't forget those guys. They may not be at the top of the list necessarily, or we sort of forgot about them because they haven't played in a week. Take a look at some of those guys. Samaje Perine would be one of those players from the Bengals as a backup running back. Earlier, I was talking about, eventually you're due for an injury. I hate to say it, but Joe Mixon, he's had a nice run. He's had a very nice run, but I'd want to have his backup on my roster. So, Harrison, who are some names that you're keeping an eye out for this week?
So the first name that I'm looking at is actually Darius Slayton, as someone as a 1 week wide receiver play. He's had a couple of really solid games over the last few weeks, but this week they go against the Lions, who have just been, dreadful defensively, defenders running into each other, not knowing who to cover. Like, it's just awful if you've watched any Lions games on defense.
Except against the Packers.
Except against the Packers, which is kind of crazy. But I would go out and get Slayton. I'd feel comfortable starting him in your flex this week. I don't know about after this week, but this week he seems like a great play. And then another wide receiver. I mean, Van Jefferson, you mentioned before, he's interesting for the Rams. I don't know how much stock I would put into that, though. I know he's going to be highly targeted just because, Cup goes down, who's the next man up? I don't really think there is a next man up level type of player in LA. So what are your thoughts on Van Jefferson in the LA situation?
Yeah, so I'm just trying. I'm moving on from LA. I'm avoiding them, and as intriguing as maybe they are, and even Tyler Higbee, I can't trust the Rams. They're one of those teams this year. It just doesn't seem like things are clicking, and it's bleak. So that's where I come out on that. But with Darius Slayton, though, I actually picked him up last week, and he was awesome. He was on my bench, but I have him in 2 leagues, and I'm excited. I'll actually consider putting him in the flex this week for sure. So great performance from him. Now, that was against the Texans, but like you say, you get the Lions now this week, so that's pretty good. One name that I find interesting is I already saw Eno Benjamin get dropped. So the Cardinals, out of nowhere, dropped him from their roster. And I have to believe that he's going to get picked up somewhere because he was productive in relief of James Conner. And so if he gets an opportunity somewhere else, I'm going to stash Eno. So there's still plenty of teams need running back help. So he's someone that I'm keeping an eye out for, and I'll make an effort, especially in the one league that I already saw him drop. It's always interesting when we see a guy drop before waivers officially take place. So I'll put a claim in for him this week. Anybody else on the waiver wire? It's maybe a little light this week. It's been light the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, a couple tight ends. You mentioned Higbee. I actually really like Higbee if he's available on waivers. He had 8 receptions this week with Cup out. He is the most trusted target there for Stafford. So in a PPR league, I don't know. He's not going to be scoring touchdowns probably because the offense is going to be pretty poor the next couple weeks. But from a PPR standpoint, I think he's going to get a lot of looks in the middle of the field from Matthew Stafford. He could have a really nice floor in these games going forward as a tight end. And then a name to keep an eye on too is Trey McBride, the rookie tight end for the Arizona Cardinals. He was their first pick in the NFL draft this year, kind of as a luxury pick with Zach Ertz already there. So they obviously really like him as a player. Super athletic rookie tight end. Like we mentioned before, Ertz is now out for the season. And I think something that helps Trey McBride as well is that Hollywood Brown should be coming back within the next couple weeks. That will open up the middle of the field a lot for him. If you have Hopkins and Brown on the outside, he'll be able to work pretty much one-on-one on linebackers in the middle of the field. And even though he's definitely a step down from Zach Ertz, the offense already has these specific tight end designed plays in place. I think he'll just slide right into Ertz's spot. They don't really have to change anything that much. He'll probably get some decent opportunities in this offense going forward.
All right, let's jump into peace or panic or maybe partial concern. And I want to start with Arizona because I find it intriguing that Colt McCoy came in, played well. Arizona is just one of those weird teams this year too. Playoff team last year. Kyler Murray signs the big contract. Hasn't had a great season. Has had moments, but Colt McCoy's been around a long time. Veteran guy, has won games in this league, has played well. And you mentioned the weapons. I mean, you have Hopkins, and if Marquise Brown does come back and gets back to how he was playing before the injury, which was a really elite level, I mean, that's quite the 1-2 punch. But do they somehow move on from Kyler and play Colt McCoy? I don't know. To me, it's like at least a consideration. I saw an article yesterday, like keep Colt McCoy in there. I'm like, wait, what? Could that be a thing? So I don't know if you have panic for Kyler Murray. I don't think you've been in on him as much as you were last year. But
no, I've not been in on him this season, but I don't have any panic for him. I don't think he's going to get benched for Colt McCoy. I mean, Colt McCoy is a fun player, but I think Kyler Murray has the starting job there pretty locked up for the rest of the season.
Yeah, there's millions of reasons why I guess he's still the guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of interesting. And he's still battling some injuries there as well. All right, let's run through a couple other names. Peace, panic, partial concern. How about the Bucs situation with Leonard Fournette? And there's some excitement and optimism because Rachaad White, 22 carries, 105 yards, and played very well. So what does this look like down the stretch? Who do you trust more? You panicking in regards to Leonard Fournette's perspective?
I'm not panicking in regard to Leonard Fournette. I think his ceiling is definitely capped now that him and Rachaad White are in a true committee backfield. Both of them are getting equal number of snaps, equal number of touches this week in the last few weeks. I know Rachaad White had 22 carries this week to Fournette's 14. That was after Fournette got a little bit banged up. But I think when Fournette comes back, he shouldn't miss any time because they're on a bye week this week. White's going to be a real weapon in this offense. He definitely brings a more explosive aspect to the run game. He had a run of 29 yards, a run of 18 yards, which is just something we do not see Leonard Fournette do. He doesn't really have that breakaway ability like White. So I think he's someone they're going to scheme into a lot of good situations to get some more explosive plays in the offense that we really haven't seen so far this season. They've been solid, but they haven't had any huge monster gains come out of the run game like they were hoping for this year. And another dual backfield committee that I think both members are valuable are the San Francisco 49ers. You know, Eli Mitchell came back, and I did not expect him to be as involved and as good as he was. But that 1-2 punch of him and McCaffrey looked great. We know Shanahan likes to use two running backs. And this doesn't make me worried about McCaffrey at all. Because if you look back to the Atlanta Falcons when they had elite offenses and Shanahan was their offensive coordinator there, you know, Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman were both top 20 running backs at one point for the Atlanta Falcons, putting up great numbers. I think the 49ers are really going to lean on the run going forward these next couple of weeks. They have a pretty light schedule going forward, making a playoff push. So I think both those guys are obviously McCaffrey is an RB1, and then Mitchell probably as a flex play are really valuable in a lot of leagues.
Yeah, I was thrilled with Eli Mitchell because I do have him on a team and was also thrilled that it didn't, McCaffrey still got in the end zone. He still got enough touches to be fantasy relevant. Well, maybe not quite as big of, whether, if he's getting 30 touches a game, that may not be the case anymore with Mitchell. I would say there's probably bigger panic for even Debo and Kittle. Like I mentioned earlier, Ayuk has actually been more of the guy. I did start Jimmy G in 2 leagues and he was not great. He was fine, but I mean, he ran one in QB sneak. But I was hoping the offense would let's really unleash and go for it and throw it all over the field and get all these weapons involved. Part of it, the Chargers defense was really good Sunday night, so I got to give them some credit and Khalil Mack and those guys. But I'm waiting for this offense to put up really what the Dolphins are doing. To me, they should have that ability. I mean, now is Jimmy as good as Tua? Maybe not. Tua's been unbelievable. But like we saw in Miami, they've got 2 running backs that are contributing. They've got 2 wide receivers that are contributing. Their tight end, Gesicki, here and there. I would expect the 49ers to get to that level at some point. But if I had any concern, it would be more on Debo and Kittle versus Eli and Christian. Both those guys, worth having in the mix. Eli probably more of a flex guy. But 80 yards, I mean, that was great. So that was encouraging. I had him on my bench, of course, because we didn't know what to expect. All right. So from an NFL perspective and a fantasy perspective, how do you feel? Panic meter seems to be high in Buffalo. We're all concerned about Josh Allen and the interceptions, the injury. Now they've fallen to 6th in the AFC, and so there's just some concern there. I was so concerned going in, I actually benched Gabe Davis, which was foolish. I still won, thankfully, but that was not a great decision. He was fine, and Josh Allen still got over 20 points in fantasy, but it does feel like the ceiling is lower at this point. How's your panic level for Buffalo?
I'm not really panicked at all for Buffalo. I think they're still a fantastic team. They played a really good team in the Vikings that I think a lot of people were underrating. I mean, this was the game of the year. If you watched any of that game, it was just unbelievable. But I think they've just had some tough games. The injury, a few decision-making things in the red zone from Josh Allen. He has 4 red zone interceptions over the last 2 weeks. Not good, but obviously some balls go your way, some don't. I'm really not that concerned at all about them. I think they'll turn it around and still be the team that we thought they were going into the playoffs.
Interesting. No, I'm probably a little more panicked, little bit more panicked from a fantasy perspective. I think if they get in the playoffs, they're as good as anybody. But I don't know. I would like to see Allen get healthy. I don't like when these guys play through the injuries this time of year. Now down the stretch, you got to. But this time of year, I don't know. Get right, so you can finish the season.
Yeah. And you look at like what Kyler did this weekend. Kyler was a little banged up. Could he have played? Yeah, but the Cardinals decided to rest him. Got solid production from their backup. We both like Case Keenum there in Buffalo. If it's an easy matchup, obviously it was a hard matchup for them to rest Josh against a team coming in that was 7-1. But just rest him for a week. Fantasy managers don't want to hear that, but it'll probably be better for them in the long run if they just sit him for a week, let his shoulder, get better, and he can keep ripping it down the field moving forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We know what he's capable of. We've seen it. He's unbelievable. So yeah, if you've got him on your fantasy team, I think he can still deliver a championship for you. But I'm not as confident as what he's done years past. I know he's won a lot of leagues the last 2 years, for sure. All right, let's finish up today's show with a topic we call, is he legit? And we ask Harrison if a player is legit. Let's begin with Green Bay, who out of nowhere, all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers is throwing touchdowns again. To who? Christian Watson, their big draft pick. Is he the next Devontae Adams? 3 touchdowns. What was it? 4 receptions. I mean, big time plays. Is he legit, Harrison?
At least for this season, I do not think that he is legit, unfortunately. I mean, what we saw from that game, it was great to see him finally connect on a few of the deep balls, but usage-wise, it really wasn't that different than what we'd seen from previous games. It was just that he was catching the balls that he normally dropped, and he still had about 2 or 3 drops in that game. So he's just a really inconsistent wide receiver at this point. Will they probably connect on a few, long touchdown passes through the rest of the year? Yes. But week to week, he could give you 2 points next week and it would be, super expectable. And then the next week after that, he goes off for another 25-point game. You're really going to have no idea with him going forward. So I would not feel comfortable starting him. I mean, he's worth definitely being rostered, but I don't think he's legit as, a flex play or a wide receiver 2 going forward.
I just don't know what to make of the Packers. They've been a mystery. If they got things figured out this past week, maybe, but I got to see more of it. I did bench Aaron Rodgers this week for Derek Carr, which wasn't great, but yeah, I don't know what to make of Christian Watson. I got to see more. I got to see more of that. All right, so now we've seen 2 weeks in a row of Jeff Wilson in Miami, another big game for him. So it appears he's legit. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. I said to pick him up a few weeks ago. I mean, he is legit. He is the starting running back there. Mostert is actually still involved. He'll still get his touches, but Wilson's unbelievable in this scheme that, McDaniels has brought over from San Francisco, except now they just have more weapons around him. So he's definitely legit. He should be started in every league.
All right, last one. Nico Collins in Houston. He's somebody that I've added, dropped all season long because there's talent there. There's possibility and opportunity there, especially with Brandon Cooks sort of having issues and not having a great year either. But it's the Houston Texans. So this week, Nico Collins, 10 targets, caught a touchdown. Is he legit? Can you trust him down the stretch?
I don't think you can trust anyone on the Texans down the stretch. I really want to say he's legit because I love the player. I think the opportunity is absolutely there in Houston with Brandon Cooks, kind of just sitting out for the rest of the season. He's now probably the number one guy there in that offense, but it's the Texans. I mean, can you really trust Davis Mills on a week-to-week basis? Don't get me wrong. He's going to have some great games. But I don't know if Nico Collins is someone that you could start every week. He's probably worth having on your roster. Maybe you could start him over this next couple of weeks in a flex spot if one of your receivers is on bye. But he's not someone that I would be confidently starting each week.
Yeah, he's a good desperation play. We'll put it that way. He's good to have on your roster if you have to have him. Yeah, boom or bust probably for the most part. All right, there you go. That's what Harrison thinks this week as far as who's legit. Great show, Harrison. Another fun one here today. And so we're heading into week 11. Wow, things are heating up. So keep your streak alive. Congrats on a 3-0 week. So hopefully our listeners are having some success this season as well. And so we love being with you each week. We'll be back, next week, Lord willing, with Thanksgiving week. So we'll do that show. And then our Christmas schedule will be a little different, but we'll try to bring you all the way to a championship this year. So hopefully that's the case. But thanks to Harrison. I'm Bryce. I'm a fantasy manager who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well. And I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans and fantasy managers who follow Jesus together. And as I talked about earlier, let's never give up. Let's keep following Jesus. Let's keep trusting him. Let's never give up in life in a lot of different areas. Keep fighting for our marriages. Keep fighting for our kids. Keep fighting for the path that God has us in our careers. And let's keep trusting him in all those areas. And so let's not give up and definitely not give up on our faith. And let's not give up in fantasy either. Finish strong. Finish the season strong. It reveals a lot of our character, a lot about our character if we keep fighting till the end. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast presented by Medi-Share. And also, go get some Sugar Creek coffee, sugarcreekcoffee.com. Use promo code UNPACK. Thanks so much.